Okay, great. So welcome everyone. I want to thank everyone for joining. I want to thank our speakers. I'm Ken Wallins, I'm with Findability Sciences, and we're really excited about the partnership that we have with IBM. It's a very powerful combination, and we're going to talk about that in a moment. What I want to start with is just a couple quick instructions. We are going to have this, the webinar facility muted for the duration of this call, but you'll have the ability to enter questions for Q&A, and we will address those later on. The other piece is that we are going to be doing a random drawing of a book. It's called The Tech Whisperer on Digital Transformation and the Technologies that Enable It. And this is written by Jaspreet Bindra, and it's published by Penguin Books. So we're going to do a random drawing, and we'll announce after this session to 3 winners. And one thing I just want to point out, which we're really excited about, is that this book showcases Findability Sciences, natural language processing, and cognitive technology. So it's going to be showcasing the book. I don't want to give away the surprise, so no spoiler alert here, but something to look out for. And again, so Findability Sciences, we are a big data, cognitive analytics, and predictive analytics company. We use artificial intelligence, and we're also a longtime partner of IBM. We use some of their technology to build our custom solutions. And so the conversational solutions that incorporate voice, virtual agents, and emails are an example of that technology and the cognitive analytics solutions that we offer. And in terms of these types of solutions, we'll call it conversational computing solutions for our purposes. There are a lot of benefits to be derived, improved customer service, increased revenue, and more efficient use of human resources. And at the same time, there's really a lot at stake for those that aren't able to take advantage of it as technology continues to evolve. And Steve will share some really interesting numbers related to this during his talk. And so just to quickly introduce them, Steve is a longtime product manager at IBM, and he's currently focused on Watson. He spends 100% of his time helping partners like Findability Sciences be successful. And Sanjay heads global sales global sales for Findability Sciences, and he brings the benefit of his technical background and expertise in solving complex business problems at companies like Citibank and Oracle. And so with that, Steve, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, I'm going to have to ask as you guys switch the slides. So if you'll move on. All right, so I wanted to share some numbers with you because we're going to be talking about conversational computing from the solution that Findability Sciences provides using Watson Assistant. But before we get there, I want to share some scary statistics. And I'll let you read them, but some of them that are really important to me are that 81% of your customers will leave after one bad experience. There are enough websites out there, there are enough restaurants out there, there are enough car dealers out there, there are enough hotels out there that you don't need to stay with someone who's doing a bad job. And so even if you go to a restaurant and you get a stomach ache and it may not even be related to the restaurant, I could almost guarantee that 90% of you will never go back to that restaurant, okay? And so one bad experience is all you get. So that begs the question down at the bottom, how smart, how good is your customer experience? So if you'll move on. All right, so I want to talk to you about conversational computing and how this question of the customer experience has been solved and in Findability Sciences, we'll talk a little bit more about it, after I'm done. But we are based on Watson Assistant, and Watson Assistant is the leader in conversational computing. There are other players in that space, but we are the only leader in that space. And one other point, I'm kind of proud of it. It showed up in the last month or so, is that for the 3rd year in a row, IBM is #1 in AI. So, I think that's really important. But what kind of things can Watson Assistant do for you? Well, if you think about, and probably the best example there is whenever I'm sitting here at IBM and I try to have an answer to an HR question, there's about 4 dozen websites I could go to, and each of them sends me somewhere, and each of them sends me somewhere By the time I get to the end, maybe I've even given up. Okay. And so one of the things that you can do with conversational computing with a chatbot is to allow me, Steve, to ask a question in natural language, and backend finds where the answer is and deals with it and talks right back to me. So it does that and improves the customer experience. Why? Because it is talking in the customer's language, whatever that happens to be. 24/7, you know, you look at banks, you look at insurance companies, many of them are multinational. And so they have a tendency to be in more than one country. And so if I'm a bank and I've got offices in Denmark and Singapore and the United States, and I made that up, I need to provide 24/7 support. So how do I provide 24/7 support? How do I provide access through whatever channel you want to use? I tend to be someone who doesn't like getting on the telephone. Okay, I would much rather type and talk to a computer because I can get up and walk away and I can come back. I don't need to impress the computer. There are things that you would not want to do using a telephone, like if you're trying to have an HR discussion and you're on the subway. There are people that are comfortable with text, there's people that are comfortable with social media, and there's even people that are very comfortable with the IVR systems. You know, press 1 for English, press 2 for Spanish, and then it gives you a menu. With Watson Assistant, you solve those problems too. And one of the things I think you'll see as we go further is that with Watson Assistant, it will handle your simple questions. If you think and I'm going to give a real easy example here, but if you're a restaurant, how many times are you called and have to answer, what hours are you open? When do you close? Are you open on Sundays? All of those same questions. So you're not really doing anything really sophisticated, and you're answering the same question, and the turnover in customer support, your humans, is 30 to 40% higher than other businesses. So Watson Assistant will solve every one of these problems. So if you move forward. All right, so let's start with insurance. And I'm going to talk about mainly 2 industries. I'm going to talk about insurance. And what you're seeing on the screen are the common touch points, the places that people often go to a customer support organization and ask. And again, you've probably made phone calls to do these. You know, I need a quote because I want some change on my policy. I need to report something because I was in a car accident. You know, I now have a new kid that I didn't have before. You know, what is my coverage? Is my deductible $250 or $500? So these are all the kind of questions that you tend to ask. And if you look underneath, there's even more questions that people ask. So there's just, the numbers are astounding there. So if you look at the next slide, it will tell you what is it that you could do with Watson Assistant. So with Watson Assistant, your customer can communicate with a chatbot. Now a chatbot, you know, I mean, Watson Assistant is much more than a chatbot in the same way that a limousine is just a car. You know, they're not the same. And in that respect, you know, Watson Assistant could communicate, like I said, 24/7 in natural language, and it's your primary location that your customers start with. They get the answers to the questions on their time 24/7. If the question is ambiguous, and I tend to do that, it gives you the answer, you know, or I'll prompt you for other questions. One other thing I have a tendency to do is I tend to digress. So, you know, I'm making a reservation for, you know, a restaurant tonight that I want to go to, but in the middle of it, I ask, well, what hours are you open? Well, that wasn't my original path. I'm in the middle of the restaurant booking. And so with Watson Assistant, you can, you know, you can digress and then come back and look at some of the other things that it's capable of doing as well. So we'll keep going. Now, there's some great examples here. The main ones I want to show are, you know, like Allianz, you know, deflecting 80% of the calls. You know, that's not just a money statement. That is a, you know, a customer satisfaction statement because they're getting the answers that they want in a timely manner. And you can tell their system's called Ally. You know, look at the far right, you see Prudential. This is in Singapore. And the volume of their call centers dropped. Why? Because they're getting most of the commonly answered questions done automatically. So think about your business and how much you could save in terms of cost center costs if all of these questions are answered automatically or deflected up to 80–90%. If you keep moving. Now, banking looks very similar not because the questions are going to be the same, but because they engage customers, and sometimes the customers ask similar types of things. I want to open some accounts. I have some common questions about making a payment. Can I deposit it online? What are my fees? And so, those of you that are in banking, you're very familiar with every one of these points, and every one of these is a touch point for your organization with your customers. And remember back what I said, and you have to get that right, because 81% of your customers will walk away and find a new bank. So if you move to the next slide, you'll see what is it that we can do. Now with automation and chatbots, again, you're that first engagement with the customer. You take an action through not giving the customer an answer, but you also can drop it into a number of different processes. I want to get a mortgage loan. Well, why don't I just get all the questions answered from you and then drop it immediately into that process? I don't need you to see somebody else. I don't need to put you on hold until you talk to somebody else. I can drop it right in the process for mortgage, mortgage approvals, and it gets taken care of immediately. And so on the next page, you'll see some other examples. And so these are, and all of these are really big customers. Okay, so I'm not going to play that down. Royal Bank of Scotland, again, 80% of their calls. Cora is the name of their chatbot. Bradesco's in Brazil. And so it was the first Portuguese or Brazilian Portuguese chatbot that was produced. And so, again, it takes the average agent response from 10 minutes to get your question answered down to just seconds. Now think about that in terms of your customer satisfaction. Your customer satisfaction, the number at the top. The agent can handle 95% of the calls and only 5% are passed to humans. And then Credit Mutual, again, can deflect a good number of calls. Small customers, big customers, they all have to deal with these problems. Their customer support is an expense. And so if you can reduce those and provide a consistent answer in the channel that your customers are happy with 24/7, then it works. And that's what Watson Assistant can do. And you'll see how Findability Sciences is using Watson Assistant to provide that. So if you move forward, I think it's going to be somebody else. Nope. One last thing about this. So I told you that, IBM was #1 in AI for 3 years in a row. Forrester showed that we are the leader in that space. That's the one in the left side. Now, what's this Watson Discovery? Steve, you've been talking about Watson Assistant. Well, sometimes your questions are hard. Sometimes your questions need you to go and look at a wealth of PDFs and PowerPoints and Word documents and pictures and get the answer. And that's Watson Assistant can tie into Watson Discovery. Watson Discovery does text analysis, and you can see, again, it is a leader in that space. And I'll use one last example to end it here, is that, what are those kind of hard questions? The easy questions, what hours are you open, or what we call short tail questions. The hard questions, as you can imagine, are called long tail questions. And one I like to use is, can I take ibuprofen with doxycycline and amlodipine? You're not going to have that coded out in a frequently asked questions. You know what ibuprofen is. It's in the category of an NSA, non-steroid, whatever that stands for, okay? Doxycycline, it's an antibiotic, and some of you probably use amlodipine to control your blood pressure. And so we have to do a search. That's a long tail question. That's where Watson Discovery steps in. So you'll get to see how that all takes place.
Steve, thanks. This is a great overview. And before I turn it over to Sanjay, Sanjay's going to give a quick overview of our architecture. And of course, if you have any elaborate questions on that, we can address those for you. And then he'll get right into the demo. So Sanjay?
Thank you, Steve, for the introduction. And I'm going to talk about how findability platform is deploying or making conversational computing solutions available to banks, insurance companies, and other users. So while Watson is a platform, we actually bring solutions to our clients which are deployed, which go live and solve real life problems of our customers and customize the solutions to their specific requirements. So here is at the center, you see findability platform, and it is a multi-channel solution. So of course you heard of chatbots, and chatbots are evolving, but we already have migrated from chatbot to also voice bot as well as email virtual assistant. So I'm going to show you demos of email virtual assistant as well as a voice bot, which is the next level of what the chatbot technology has evolved to and offers. So first of all, you see here channel management. So of course we support web, Facebook Messenger, WhatsApp for business as the chatbot channels, but we also support emails. So what distinguishes email is the high volume that B2C companies receive in terms of customer service issues or inquiries, and you normally need human agents to read those emails, comprehend them, and then answer those emails. So what we have done here is we using NLU and NLP, we understand the intent and the uh, intent of the queries that are there in the email, and one single email can have multiple queries. We compose intelligent answers to each of those queries in a single email and then provide a reply. Similarly, we have VoiceBot, which voice virtual assistant, which handles phone-based queries where we integrate with your IVR system, and some of the frequently asked question type of queries can be answered using using our voice virtual assistant. So I'm going to show you a demo for voice virtual assistant as well. In addition to this, what we do, we also handle the business flow of individual your customers. So each wherever we go to a client, they have their own unique business flows. So we need to understand those business flows and customize them to your specific requirements. Sometimes we also need to store data either locally or in your firewall, which can be used to provide dashboards and reports as per your specific requirements. So we use IBM Watson Assistant API for conversation, and we program Watson for the intents, entities, and also for dialogue flow to power the natural language processing part of it. And we support multiple languages, of course, the standard ones in English and European languages, and also some of the Middle Eastern and Asian languages are supported. We also need to sometimes integrate with your core systems, which may be transaction systems in such as core banking or an insurance transaction or policy platforms. We usually have to integrate with your CRM system such as SFDC or any other to be able to give a customer experience which the customer is expecting. On the client application, we integrate with using REST API. So this is API-based economy, and we are able to wherever APIs are available, we can connect and fetch information and render it to answer users' questions. So with this, I'm going to show you a demo of the voice assistant. The application is that I'm going to demonstrate is for banking, and this is for answering users' questions. So I'm going to open it over here.
Hello there, welcome to ABC Bank Customer Contact Center. I am your virtual assistant. I can help you with account balance, transaction history and activate your card. What would you like to do?
Account balance?
So it is about balance check, is that right?
Yes.
To continue, I will need to authenticate you. Please help me with your full name.
Sanjay?
Sanjay, can you please tell me your date of birth?
1st November 1970.
And your zip code?
01801.
Thank you, Sanjay. Your authentication is successful. To check your account balance, please state your last 4 digits of debit card.
0654.
Please tell me your card expiry date.
0121.
Also, please tell me your card 3-digit CVV number.
279.
Your account balance is $25,000. Is there anything else I can help you with? Account balance, transaction history or activate your card?
Transaction history?
Please tell me the last 4 digits of your debit card.
4567.
To continue, please let me know which month's transaction history do you want to know?
September? Below
are the transactional details for September month. On September 15, 2019, you have credit of $7,000 and total balance was $30,000. Your reference number for this transaction is FS1122. On September 25, 2019, you have debit of $5,000 and your balance was $25,000. Your reference number for this transaction is FS9878. Is there anything else I can help you with? Account balance, transaction history or activate your card?
No, thank you.
Okay, thanks for contacting us. Have a good day.
All right, so we could also show you the chat history on the right hand side. If it is needed, then it can be rendered, but if it in a normal voice bot situation, it might not be needed, but we log it for you for subsequent use, analysis, and if there are any questions which the voice assistant could not understand, then we can analyze it and train the bot as required. So with this, I'm going to move on to FP Reply. So FP Reply is our intelligent email assistant. So it's an email virtual assistant. So we see many situations where the B2C companies or even some of the B2B companies which manage travel desk for multiple corporate clients, they receive a large volume of emails. And those need to be understood in terms of what is the content, what are the queries that the user is asking, and preparing and composing a reply based on the understanding of those intents. And then those, once the reply is composed, then it has to be, it can be routed to an agent's queue where the agent can either review it and then just press the send button, or if it is a standard FAQ type of query, then it can be programmed to be delivered automatically without any agent intervention. So this helps to save the cost and the productivity of your email handling agents. So this graphic shows how the intelligent email routing works. So incoming emails, they are processed for intents and entities. So intents are really the number of queries, and what distinguishes email handling, which is more complicated than usual chatbot. Because in the chatbot, there is one single question being asked at one point of time. Whereas in email, because it is offline, a user can ask multiple queries in a single email. So that needs understanding each intent individually and answering each of the questions that the user is asking and composing a reply. Based on that understanding of the intents, we also are able to route it by classifying the emails into multiple categories so that different agents who specialize in those tasks, they get it in their respective queues and they handle those answering those emails. And the most important part is this grayed out part, which is automatic composition of responses based on natural language understanding of the queries and understanding the intents and having the dialogues or answers to those respective intents. And final is routing it to different queues, either of the agents or send it as an automatic reply directly to the user. So I'm going to, after this, I'm going to show you a demo of it, how it works. So here is where I have a number of 3 types of queries that a user can ask in this Word document, which I'm going to send out as emails and receive the respective replies. So there are 3 types. First is FAQ, which are the normal queries. They don't need any reference to anything except to go to a knowledge base and compose a reply and reply those queries automatically. The second is a transaction query, where he's your existing customer and he wants to know something about the insurance policy. For example, he wants to know about the sum assured, or he wants to know what is the due date of the policy by giving a specific policy number. And third is those type of emails which require agent action. So for example, a user might be requesting for a refund because he might have paid excess amount. So here again, our system is able to go to the core system and fetch the required details and pre-compose a reply, which can be handled by an agent and can be reviewed by an agent and replied. And in the meantime, the system gives an answer that somebody is going to attend to your question. So these are the 3 types of different types of emails that I'm going to deal with in this. So what I have here is, for example, in the first one, there are 4 questions, and this question is about the child insurance plan. And in the second column question, you see 4 different questions. One is, I'm interested in your child plan. I have few queries. And next to that, you see a similar question. So it means the intent is the same, but it's worded differently. So that is where the natural language processing and natural language understanding comes into play. It's the same question, but worded differently. Similarly, the second line that you see, what is the right time to buy a child plan? Or it could be worded as, when should I buy a child plan? So this is again same intent. And the third question is, what should I check before buying a child plan? And fourth question is, how do I calculate the amount of money required for each milestone for my child or for my kid? So I'm going to take this here, this text, and I'm going to ask these 4 questions by sending it in Outlook. And I'm going to send this to support@findabilitysciences.com. I'm going to call the subject line as child plan query number 100 and then send it out. Now I'm going to open my browser here to show you the dashboard for FP Reply, which is our email virtual assistant. And I'm going to log in here. So this shows the dashboard, what kind of questions emails have come in the past. But I'm going to show you the dashboard where we process those emails. So it may take a few seconds for the email to show up here, but I'm going to just refresh this to see.
Sanjay, in this moment while we're waiting for the email, can you talk about multiple intents and how different questions can be put into a queue and routed in different directions?
Yes, so that is done through process of training. So we need to sit down with individual customer to understand their business, and of course we have a lot of experience already, so we can bring that experience when we sit down with you. So we're not starting with a blank slate, but we really need to understand your specific workflow or business process, and what are the typical questions that are being asked. And from that we analyze the different types of intents and what is the intended answer. So we can compose some of those answers for your review, and once you say those are okay, then we train Watson for those various intents and entities. And Watson has the ability to understand the natural language, so it can, as long as the question is asked in different ways, it can still follow based on that single training. So as long as we cover all the intents which are typically encountered in your situation, then we are good to go, and we can handle multiple types of questions of different users who might pose it in a different fashion.
Excellent, thank you. That's really powerful.
All right, so I can see it here. The question has come in this in our dashboard, and you can see that it is child plan query 100, and all the questions, 4 questions have been received in this upper box. And the response to the email is, you can see here it was processed auto because it was a FAQ type of question. So we had programmed it for auto delivery. So it was processed and also delivered as an email reply to the user. So I'm going to say go back, and this same reply I would see in my email box. So I see it here, help desk findability sciences, answering the query with the subject line child plan query 100. And you can see here the first question is being answered. I'm interested in your child plan. So what does a child plan do? So that's the answer to the first question. What is the right time to buy the child plan? So this is the answer to that question based on some research has been quoted here. What should I check before buying a child plan? So this is the answer to that question with the various bullets. And the last question was, how do I calculate the amount of money required for each milestone? So it gives some indicative guideline about at different age milestones, what kind of expenses that you can expect at a headline level. And, based on that, you can prepare a budget as to what is the kind of amount for which you should purchase this plan. So this is the first email. Then second is transaction inquiry. Now this is transaction inquiries. Really, it requires integration with your backend, because it has to fetch that data from the backend system and then render a result to you. So these type of questions normally will be routed to an agent. Agent can review if the answer is accurate, and then he can just press the send button. So I'm going to take this as an email and send it out here. So I can see it in my Outlook outbox in the sent item folder, and then I'm going to go back here and see, wait for that email to come here. So this is while many companies are providing chatbots, not so many companies are providing intelligent AI-based email automation, where there is really a need to understand the specific questions that a customer is asking or a user is asking, and pre-composing a reply which is enabled or powered by AI. So this really brings productivity and consistency in terms of the reply, the way your agents reply, because this is automated, is based on natural language understanding. So I can see here that the email has come here and it says unprocessed here. Unprocessed means it is in the agent's queue for review by the agent. The question here is, I'm existing customer, I need to know the sum insured, my policy number is so and so. And the answer that is composed is sum assured for your policy is rupees so much. And so the agent can see whether it's okay. So this process, I mean, we have introduced this step for agents review, but of course, the system could very well have delivered this email automatically. But now that agent reviews it, he can just press the send button here. And then it says, gives a message that mail to sanjay@findabilitysciences.com has been sent. And then I go back here in my Outlook and check it here. And the reply is here. So it says, yes, sum assured for your policy is so much. So I'm not going to go into the third category, which is the agent action requests. So these are for example, refunds where the customer paid 15405 instead of 15045, and he is asking for a refund. So these typically may require an agent's review and some checking with the back office or different department. So the system will automatically compose a reply and say that acknowledge that your queries is being worked on, and this is the reference number given to you, and to expect a actual reply subsequently. So this is, of course, we have delivered multiple chatbots, for example, in Aviva, which is a life insurance company, which is using it for customer service for lead generation and marketing. So this is an integrated solution which can handle conversations in chat mode, in email, as well as voice virtual assistant. So we have made good use of Watson technology in a creative ways. We also use different other APIs from Watson, such as personality insights or tone and sentiment, and we have multiple creative solutions on top of the conversational computing solutions that we have demonstrated here. So with that, I think we have just about 5 minutes left. So I hand it back to Ken to see if there are any questions.
Perfect. Thank you, Sanjay. So we do have some Q&A. So let's see if we can get through those in just about 4 minutes we have. So the first question is for Steve, and it's asking about what options, cloud or on-premises, are available for Watson. Steve?
So the answer to that is sort of yes. We can run Watson Assistant, Watson Discovery, and the other services both in the public cloud as well as in a private cloud on-premises. So you get both. And in fact, interestingly enough, you can run it on our competitors' clouds as well.
Excellent. That's great. And same goes for the findability platform. So we offer the same options. The next question is for Sanjay, and it is asking, what is the number of questions that should be trained to get the chatbot ready for deployment? So I think that's referring to the machine learning.
Right. So, of course, it depends the number of questions. There is no limit in terms of the number of questions that Watson can be trained on. But we try to break those down in different intents, right? So there may be 100 questions, but actually the intents might be 20 or 30. And we train a findability platform and Watson in those specific intents so that we handle a comprehensive list of questions that can come from the users. The actual number of questions could be in hundreds on the higher side, but so the training itself doesn't take that much time. So we some of the demos that we demonstrated to you just took about a couple of days of training to get them out and rolling. But typically it can take anywhere between 2 weeks to 6 or 8 weeks, depending on how complicated, how many number of products we have to handle, how many workflows are involved in preparing a comprehensive corpus for training.
Okay, excellent. And the next question is also for you, Sanjay. It's asking what is the pricing model for the chatbot, but I think you could expand that to include the other solutions as well.
Right. So, of course, there are different options to deploy this. It can be deployed on cloud, which is the preferred option many times, but it can also be deployed on premise. And the pricing for those varies. And pricing is flexible, but in general, it is based transaction-based pricing. So it is really based on the number of conversation, so that customer can see real business benefit by having pay-as-you-go model. So they can start small with lower volumes, but as they keep growing, then we can still support them with telescopic pricing. But basically, it's conversation based on number of conversations. There is some implementation cost in the beginning, which is when we understand your workflows and implement it. So that's a fixed cost based on a project estimate, which could be anywhere between 4 weeks, 6 weeks, or 8 weeks, depending on your complexity.
Okay, great, thanks. And a question for Steve. What is the number of languages that the chatbot can handle?
So Watson Assistant itself is programmed for 12, but that really just means how do you code the chatbot? It's, you know, the language that you as a developer would use. Many of our customers have used like a language translator with that. And in fact, there's an article on how to have a multilingual chatbot, and our language translator can do 30 with another 18 on the way. So, you know, I don't see that as far as, you know, you can code the intents, the responses, and anything in any language that you want.
Okay, excellent, thank you. Great, and then let's see if we can squeeze one last question in. This is a little bit connected to the question, Sanjay, that you answered about the number of questions that are needed for training. And the question is, what is the historical data needed to train the chatbot? So I think in this case, it's asking what is, you know, specifically what kind of databases, what kind of content, that sort of thing. And if you can answer that before we wrap up in the next minute or so. Right.
So I think, you know, it again depends, but we need to have, you know, if there are any live chats that the customer already has from where he has the type of questions that the call center receives or the live chat agents receive, then that becomes a good starting point. And I think generally speaking, last 2 or 3 months of data is sufficient to get a good understanding of the type of questions, the type of workflows, the type of intents and queries that are coming up. And that data is good enough for us to get started and give a pretty good output to our customers.
Excellent. Well, terrific. Well, I think that we probably need to wrap up right now. So I want to thank you, Sanjay. Steve, thank you very much. I want to thank the audience for joining in and for submitting the questions. Next steps, we are happy to answer specific questions that you have as it relates to your world. And certainly reached out to us. We look forward to hopefully have an opportunity to work with you and showcase how our solutions can be beneficial to your specific needs. At the end of this webinar, when you close out, a pop-up window should appear. And we ask you to please fill that out. We're really interested in you responding to the survey so we can make sure we keep this relevant to you. And then finally, the 3 winners will be notified of the random drawing that we're going to be doing for the book. And so look out for that as well. And with that, we'll close out. And again, thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.